Hello and welcome, dear friends. Lucas here from Science Studios. Together with Dawson Music, we released a new plugin called Chop Suey. Chop Suey is your all-in-one solution for your kick drum samples, and it's a super versatile plugin made to design, create and manipulate all your kick drum samples. Let's have a look inside and have a look at the UI first. So we're looking at the user interface of Chop Suey right now, and it can be separated into two halves, the upper and the lower half. The upper half holds the head bar, the waveform interface in the middle, and down here the overall control parameters to your kick drum. The head bar consists of host tempo in BPM, play and sync button, the draggable Chop Suey logo, which you can use to export your kick drum, the velocity button, which enables velocity sensitivity, the output gain control, and the output gain meter. Below the head bar are the undo and the redo buttons, the drop down menu to load and save your patches, to initialize the patch, and to choose from the so far 199 factory presets of kick drums in Chop Suey. The waveform interface in the middle is intersected into three areas: the transient in yellow in the beginning, the body in the middle in green, and the tail in blue. The waveform interface always shows you the current state of your kick drum as it's rendered in real time. So if you were to export it right now, it look absolutely the same as it does in the waveform interface. The timeline below shows you the length of your kick drum, and the red bar on the right marks the next quarter note, so the next beat in a 4/4 pattern. The three crossfade bars can be moved sideways to alter the length of each of the three components, and by dragging up and down from the sliders' heads, you get to steepen or flatten the crossfade curves. You can zoom in on the whole waveform interface by just using the zoom control, or you can use the auto button to fixate the exact length of your kick in the window. The skew button in the front lets you zoom in just on the transient area individually, as that one's usually pretty important to the sound and the timbre of your kick drum, but it's super short and very hard to see. So you might want to zoom in on that to actually see what your modifications are doing to your sound. Let's move further to the right to the pitch control of your kick drum. Chop Suey does not only let you change the pitch of your kick drum, but it also analyzes it based on the last 100 milliseconds of your kick, which is usually the tail area, and that is important to detect the actual key of a kick drum. The pitched value, as all following parameters, can be modified by an envelope in the waveform interface. As you see here, you can create as many envelope points as you want by just double-clicking the envelope. That lets you, for example, create an even steeper pitch envelope in your kick. Next to that sits the filter section with the parameters cutoff, beef, resonance, and punch protect. When punch protect is activated, your punch area, so everything below 150 Hz in your kick drum, is going to be preserved and is not going to be affected by the filter. The filter is a classic low-pass filter, which can be overdriven to introduce warm saturation using the beef parameter. The resonance lets you introduce a resonant peak at the filter's cutoff frequency. You should be aware that beef, resonance, and punch protect are only active when the cutoff is activated. and you activate that by setting it to any value lower than 100%. Glue is an emulation of an analog distortion and introduces nice and warm saturation at first and heavy distortion when you drive it even further. Gain next to it controls the output signal, but that can still be driven into a following clipping stage. So you can make your sound louder, but the clipping stage might actually cut off all eventual peaks that exceed 0 dB, and that leads to more audible but digital distortion before it passes the output. Gain is not to be confused with output gain, as the clip button still is in between that, and the clip button lets you decide whether the clipping happens inside the plugin, so preventing any excess peaks from passing outside of Chop Suey, or if you want to let the signal just pass without any further introduction of digital clipping, but with the risk of peak signals exceeding the 0 dB mark in the output or in the later processing stage in your DAW. Let's have a look at the lower half. Chop Suey's lower half contains the parameters to modify all three components of a kick drum individually. So there's an offset, a phase, pitch, and a gain control for each transient, body, and tail. The offset lets you sweep through the loaded sample. Phase does pretty much the same, but on a much smaller scale, so much more precisely, allowing you to match the phases of your three components very cleanly. You can pitch all three components individually, and you can obviously match their gain. Each of the components can be muted or set to solo, and you can swap out samples by loading them via the arrow buttons, via the drop-down menu, or by loading them from outside via drag and drop. After you dropped one sample into one of the components, you can distribute it across to the others using these colored arrows here. I hope I've given you a good understanding of how easy and intuitive it is to work with this plugin and how big the possibilities actually are with creating, designing, and modifying your kick drums in Chop Suey, that you can always keep track of your pitch and modify that you can phase align all the three components individually to always make sure that your kick is phase aligned, and that you have full control over each important parameter till the end of a production. I wish you lots of fun with using Chop Suey in your productions, and I hope you come to good results.